Hi, I'm Kristyn Burtt for Lifescript.com. Ann Romney is stepping back into the spotlight to share her journey with multiple sclerosis in her new book, In This Together. After being diagnosed in 1998, the former First Lady of Massachusetts realized how challenging it is to live with the disease on a day-to-day basis. She's now pushing for research for a cure, and she's teaming up with Maria Shriver to find funding for neurologic diseases. Learn more about her incredible story in this exclusive Lifescript interview. Well, I have to say, I read your new book, In This Together, from cover to cover, and really a fascinating journey of what you've gone through from your MS diagnosis all the way through up to now. Can you just sort of take us back to that moment when you started feeling some type of symptoms that you didn't know what they were yet?
Well, it is a mysterious disease. It's hard to diagnose, and until we had MRI imaging, you really couldn't give the definitive diagnosis. And a lot of time people have Lyme, by the way, and they think they have MS, and it's not. So that was the first test they did for me, was the Lyme test. But it is, you just know your body isn't functioning right. And for me, my right leg was numb, just completely numb. I was losing my balance. I was dropping things. I was bumping into walls. I was like, I'd start running up the stairs and I'd like get discombobulated. I wouldn't know where I was. But you know, when those things first start happening, you don't pay much attention to it. And it wasn't until like the fatigue hit that I thought, what is going on? Because I was so active. And then all of a sudden I couldn't do anything. I mean, I couldn't get out of bed. And it wouldn't go away no matter, you know, I used to be a runner, and I think, you know, after a long race, okay, the next day you feel fine. You rest, you get a good night's sleep, eat a little bit, you're fine, no big deal. Nothing I did would make me feel better. I'd eat really well, or I'd get a good night's sleep. I'd wake up and I'd be like, I wake up this tired? What's going on? That went on for months, and I had no idea like who to go to, like who's the doctor I don't feel good that you go to?
Right. Do you go to your general practitioner and just say, I'm really tired?
I know. It was like I couldn't like say, this is what's going on. I had no idea. And it was really kind of pre-internet where it was just starting with the internet, so I didn't really, it was 1998, so you couldn't really like search it.
What was the breaking point that you're like, okay, I'm going to the doctor?
The breaking point was I was on a cancer advisory board at Massachusetts General Hospital, and I remember going to thinking, I don't know how I'm even going to go to the meeting. Going into the hospital thinking, I'm going to the wrong meeting. I don't need to be going to this meeting. I need to be going to another meeting which is talking about what's wrong with me. And I remember walking by a table, and they had, it was like, I can't remember what it was for, but I picked up the brochure, and I looked at it, I'm like, nope, this isn't me. You know, I mean,
Cross that one off.
That's not, I crossed that off. But that was when I went home from that meeting, and I called my brother, who's a doctor, and I said, Jim, something's wrong with me, and these are my symptoms. And then he took like an hour on the phone with me and asking me all these questions, because he thought I might have had a brain tumor, frankly, now that I look back and the questions he was asking me. But then he finally said, no, you need to go see a neurologist. And I thought, that's weird. My leg is numb. Why would I go see a neurologist? I had no idea.
Yeah, they're tied. Everything's tied.
Everything's tied, but so when I saw the neurologist, he didn't really, the first visit was like, oh, here, go have your MRI. He wasn't like, oh, let's do anything. And then it was when I had the MRI that the doctor sat down with me, and that was when Mitt was with me, and he ran through all these tests, which I failed miserably, and I knew I was failing. And it was like, oh dear. And then he looks at the MRI, and then he looks at me, and he says, you have MS. And it was like, he gratefully left the room. So because obviously Mitt and I just dissolved in tears. And it was at that time when the title of the book came, was Mitt said, look, this isn't fatal. We're going to be okay. We're in this together. So
that's exactly what you want to hear from a family member,
yes,
too.
You needed that.
You need that support. So when you went to that first doctor, you went and got a second opinion, didn't you?
Not for a while. I mean, I knew I had MS. It wasn't like I needed a second opinion as to my diagnosis. But what he told me, which was kind of stunning, was, I'm so sorry, but go home until you're really sick, and then we'll treat you when you're really sick. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm really sick. What are you talking about?
Feeling well.
I'm really sick.
So what was that initial course of treatment?
Well, there was no treatment. Nothing. Go home. And they now talk to that period of when people were diagnosed with MS. It's called diagnose and adios. And that's what, if you have ALS, that's still what they tell you. So sorry, go home. So I went, for the next 2 months, I progressed very rapidly. I lost a lot more function. I got a lot sicker. Over the next 2 months, I was going downhill. Like I was on an attack, and I was just, my leg, I mean, I lost not just my leg, it was going all the way up my whole body.
It was rapid.
It was really rapid. And then another doctor friend said, you should go see my friend Howard Weiner at the Brigham, who is a research doctor, but I think he sees a few patients. And when he saw me, his initial reaction was the same thing. I mean, looked at the MRI, did the testing, the same testing, and then took me by the arm and put me instantly on an infusion chair and started IV steroid treatment. And he said, we have to hit this hard and fast, and we'll know pretty quickly if this is working or not. And it did. And so for me, it was at that, was at the stage where nobody understood what treatment worked for anybody, and the sort of the thought was we wait till later to treat aggressively. Well, that's really, now they've discovered that's the wrong approach. You treat aggressively early and try to get a hold of it before it completely gets a hold of and gets a foothold in your body.
And every person is different. Each journey is different, isn't it?
It is, and that's the mystery. The real mystery of MS is that, for instance, the IV infusion steroids and combined with a little chemotherapy worked for me beautifully. It might not work for someone else. Copaxone might work for somebody. It might not work for someone else. Tysabri, which is another wonderful new drug, might work for somebody and not work for somebody else. And so right now, that is where the frontier is for MS, is figuring out why. and we're getting there. It's pretty exciting. We are getting there, and there's a lot of things coming up the road in our research that we're uncovering. So it's getting exciting.
Well, I think what is exciting is that you've partnered up with Brigham and Women's Hospital. You have the Ann Romney Research Center for Neurologic Diseases with Dr. Howard Weiner.
Right.
So you were talking briefly about some of those breakthroughs and what's been done at the research center. It's really incredible.
It's incredible. So the concept, which I love with what we're doing and this is these Dr. Dennis Selko and Dr. Howard Weiner. They're two brilliant researchers, one in Alzheimer's and one in MS. What they know now is that some of these diseases are, some of the treatment, they've accidentally discovered that one treatment for MS might help a brain tumor, or it's just kind of interesting. One research development will unlock a cure for Alzheimer's. So they're now knowing that this is really important. So under this one umbrella, we will be studying multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, and brain tumors. That is exciting, and that's going to push and be more aggressive for just accelerating the research. But what they found in these amazing two doctors is something that they're working on, which is exciting in the lab, which is a vaccine, a nasal vaccine for Alzheimer's. And of course, we're hoping it's going to work. It's working in the lab. Will it work in human trials? And they're fast-tracking it as aggressively as they can, because obviously so many people would want to be able to know about this.
Absolutely.
They're hoping for human trials in 2017. So those things are happening in the lab, and there's things that are exciting that we know could make a huge difference in people's lives. They're also finding in the lab, it works in the lab again, a treatment for the very first time for ALS that's very effective. So again, human trials, we believe, in 2017. So it's really critically important that people know that the neurosciences have to make these extraordinary breakthroughs, and they're on the cusp of doing that. And it's so important that we get the research dollars to these doctors so that we can, again, accelerate some of these programs.
Now I hear you might be teaming up with Maria Shriver, because her family's been affected with Alzheimer's. And what are you two thinking about doing together?
Maria and I just did an interview last night together, and she and I are both on fire about this, and the fact, by the way, that both of us are women, and we understand that Alzheimer's affects women in a much greater degree, a 40% more likelihood for women to get Alzheimer's than men. The same with MS, much more likely for women to have MS than men. And, she and I are asking the question why. And we want to put a concept paper together with my center and try to have women finance and help fund some of this research so that we can try to unlock some of these things. So it would be women driven,
which is great,
which would be awesome. And I think Marie and I are chatting and saying, why not? Let's you're fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by this. We're on two different coasts. We're in two different parties, but we can come together and really care and make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I think it would make a huge impact. And people are looking for that lightning rod. Like, what is going to prevent Alzheimer's or MS or any of that? And I think it's something that's on a lot of people's minds.
Well, I think it's also time. I think, we're feeling as though the neurosciences have had a back seat for some of the progress that's been made in heart and lung and some of the cancers that have been fantastic, some of these new treatments. But the neurosciences have not made those kinds of advances. And now we feel as though it is time. And we feel like we're there, where there will be an explosion of research. And so Maria, it was great last night. She was like, I want people trying to decide what field they want to go into women, scientists. We want scientists, we want researchers, we want neuroscientists, that's what we really, really want. If anyone's trying to figure out what field they want to go into, please go into that field.
Encourage the women to do that.
Absolutely. It's going to be exciting.
Now, I know you did the steroids for treatment, but you also did some alternative therapies as well.
Yeah, so the toughest, there were a couple of really tough moments in the disease. The other tough moment was, okay, the treatment seems to be working and it's stopping the progression, but I feel terrible. I still don't I'm so tired and fatigued all the time. And so that was when I realized I was on my own. And that, yes, that Western medicine had helped me to this point, but now how was I going to feel better? And I accidentally stumbled onto these things. And one of it was reflexology. And I found this extraordinary 78-year-old German man, Fritz Bleitschau, that became my Oompa during the 3 years we were in Salt Lake. And he treated me for 2 hours, 3 times a week. Really painful, but wonderful experience too, because he gave me back my life.
I felt it. I felt that excruciating pain.
He did. It was painful, but he gave me back my life. And then the horses were another added thing, which was an excitement and a joy to get out of bed and something to go do. But my life got reduced. It was like I was doing so much, and all of a sudden all I could do was go ride a horse and go see Fritz. And my job was just to get better. And for 3 years, that's all I did. And it was an extraordinary period in my life where the whole rest of my life I've been doing things for others and serving on boards and doing all these things and raising children and helping knit, and all of a sudden I could do nothing except take care of myself, and barely. And so, but it was an introspective period where I learned a lot about sort of strength of character and persevering and climbing out of that black hole. And
yeah, I think what you do notice is anyone that's diagnosed with a disease, whether it's cancer or MS, you often feel the depression, or people talk about the isolation, the loneliness, because if you're not around people that have that walk that same path, you feel like you're the only one.
Right, and you are, when you're going through it, you are, like, you're it, this is it, and no one else is having to deal with this, and you don't want to be a burden. Also, I mean, I didn't want to tell my husband how upset I was or how depressed I was. I mean, he kind of knew, but it's like all of a sudden all the rules of life are thrown out. You got to write your own new rule book, and you're not happy about where you are. You're like, oh man, this is awful. I can't believe that I'm going to have to live the rest of my life feeling like this. Like life isn't worth living if I feel like this every day. I can't do anything. So, struggling through all of that and then trying to figure it out and trying to figure out how to keep going, it was really hard.
You had a wonderful analogy, and I absolutely loved it, because I'm like, we can all relate to this. The bag of rocks.
Yeah.
When you're living that charmed life and all of a sudden life hands you a bag of rocks that you know.
Yeah, I know. And it was I go to church every Sunday. We listen to all these talks. I never remember anything. It's like, like you hear these things and you think, oh, isn't that a great talk? And then it's like next week you're like, what was that talk about? You don't remember. Yeah. This one I remembered forever. And because I guess it really just touched my heart, where it was a friend of ours was talking in church, and he was saying, being a pastor, he has now realized that looking at an audience, before he would just see all these happy faces. Now that he was like the bishop and having to deal with people and deal with their personal lives, he realized every single person had a bag of rocks. Now, most of the time they were slung over the back of your shoulder, you couldn't see them, but every single person had a bag of rocks. And I just remembered that, and that I realized when he talked about it, when I was sitting in the audience thinking, I don't have a bag of rocks.
Where's my bag of rocks?
Oh, wait. Bag of rocks. Oh, wait, it's coming.
We've got one for you.
Yeah, and and that's true. It's like, live long enough, you will have your bag of rocks, and most of the time it'll be slung over the back of your shoulder. No one will know you're carrying them. And I think the real lesson in this is that recognize that people are vulnerable and they're fragile, that we all are, and let's not be so tough on everybody. Let's be a little kinder. Let's be a little nicer.
It really was a wonderful analogy. And, another thing that resonated with me, because you were a mom of 5, CEO of a household, getting everyone, keeping everyone together, you now needed to rely on them.
Yeah.
What was that sort of switch?
It was a real switcheroo, well, especially with my children. Fortunately, and I don't know how women do it that have young children that are diagnosed, because I tell you, the energy and the fatigue level is horrible. But with my children, my youngest was a senior in high school when I was diagnosed. It was mid-October of his senior year. And his really best friend, his mother had MS. So my son instantly was like, arm around mom, I'm here, everything's great, and he was fantastic. He thought, but he didn't understand the disease, and a lot of his friends said, I'm so sorry, your mother's going to die. And, and that's tough for a kid to hear when they go to school. Yeah. And, he had to struggle through that, and he kind of was like the brave soldier for a while, not like sharing with me that he was so fearful for my life. But he was great, and the other boys were off, and I don't think they appreciated how bad I was until they saw me at Christmas when we were all together, and they're like, what happened to Mom? Where is she? Yeah. She's in bed? No, where's dinner? I mean, it's like, no, not happening.
Yeah, where is she?
Not happening. And I just really, it was hard for me. It was really, really hard for me. And then also knowing that, like, the boys were so used to me, and Mitt used to me just like running the show. And now they were running the show.
Yeah, you talked about that Christmas. You're like, this is one of my favorite holidays. The family's home. We celebrate together. And you're like, I can barely get out of bed to cook a meal.
I couldn't cook a meal. So I couldn't go Christmas shopping. I couldn't do anything. And it was amazing. I was really, really bad. And I want to give people hope to say, I thought really that was my burden that I was going to have to carry through the rest of my life. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find strategies to pull yourself through those things, and to get more energy, and to try to not, obviously it is devastating, but there are ways, and there's things you've got to do to make yourself feel better.
Well, I love some of the tips in the back that you offered, because they were so beautiful. Because when someone else doesn't walk the same path that you do, but you're able to tell another MS patient, like, use humor, use your faith, your spirituality. I mean, there were some wonderful thoughts and ideas for people to take with them. Yeah. Especially at initial diagnosis.
Find something, joy, find joy. What is it where is it in your limitation where you still have limits, but where can you still find joy with those limits? And, it's kind of amazing. And the other thing I was really wanted to be sensitive about is I don't feel like, okay, I had a tough little go for a while, but it wasn't anything like what some people have to face. So I did write about some really, really tough situations where people went through much tougher things than I went through. And the resilience of the human spirit is just fantastic. And, the ability for people to deal with horrible trauma and, and still go on. It's quite amazing, the resilience of the human spirit.
It really is. It like lifts you up. I've got to imagine you're inspiring a lot of people. What are you hearing as you speak to people? I'm sure you heard on the campaign, but also out on your book tour.
It's the same thing I heard in the campaign, which is we love you, we pray for you, thank you. You're giving me hope. Thank you. This is so important. I'm going to, I'm dealing with someone that's where you were in the dark place. I need to know that I can give them this book, whatever. It's kind of been great.
That's amazing. How are you today? How are you managing a very busy schedule?
Well, I couldn't have done this if I weren't well and in remission and feeling strong. And I've been weak and now I'm strong. And so I say, to those that are having a really difficult time, lean on me. I'm there for you now, and we're going to do something with this, and we're going to hopefully make a huge impact and improvement on people's lives through the research we're doing.
The proceeds from your book, where are they going?
My proceeds are going directly to research, to the Ann Romney Center for Neurologic Research, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's, and brain tumors. So people can know if they buy this book, it's going to be going to a great cause.
That's good to know.
And I will tell you the important thing for understanding how research dollars works. The NIH is a huge, huge benefactor to so much research in this country. However, if you want to start seed programs where it's maybe experimental, the NIH won't fund that. So if you want to do some of the out-of-box things that we're doing with the nasal vaccine for Alzheimer's, we have to seed that with philanthropic dollars. So it's really can jumpstart some research.
It's almost at a grassroots level. It's really interesting.
It's kind of great.
That's incredible. Mrs. Romney, thank you so much. Such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.